See, we need to start coming out properly, showcasing that we do not just take decisions on our own, especially on the economic space. We do engage with professionals and also make sure that these are things that we are looking at and we can take informed decision going forward. Now, part of the discussion, as we said, as we were issuing the discussion, I don't want to go into detail on other issues because we're going to process with a panel. But the issue of how we deal with sectoral and also responding to the challenges as ANC is important. I was saying to National Chair in the morning that part of what would be important, and when we discussed with the Secretary General, was that it will be important for us to have one voice, one message, many voices, so that the issue of contradictory messaging and where we stand on issues can reduce, because it kills confidence not only on investors but also on our population. So this is our starting way as the new NEC to say more dialogue will happen, and I say this on the authority of the Secretary General because he was going to raise these issues when he was going to address here, that more there will be engagement with sectors, professional, not only towards conferences or towards policy development, but as we implement this policy so that we can look at how we are doing things. Consistency in terms of our work as the organization where we stand, but also the messages to our own deployees on what is expected of them to do and how to do it. So with that, colleagues, comrades, welcome to Economic Dialogue of the ANC. Looking forward to participation and engagement and feedback on some of the issues that you think should be incorporated in our discussions, in our work, both in the ANC and in government. I would like to indicate for those of you who have joined us through live streaming, but also through Zoom platform, which we've created, we will not be able to open that platform for participation. So participation, you will be able to listen to the discussions, you will be able to hear the feedback and everything. When we open for people to ask questions and comment from the floor, it will be from the main venue, unfortunately. So it's the benefits for those who are here physically, who made efforts to come here, that will be given an opportunity to ask questions, to comment, but to indicate in terms of where they think issues should be. And those who are in the platform, we thought that because many of you have requested that you might not be able to come to Free State, but you would want to hear the colleagues that we have invited to be here to give their inputs and also to be able to give their comments. National Chair, I'm going to abuse my powers in the platform, just to give you 2 minutes to make some few remarks. I know you are going to leave for your deployment, but I would want you to just have a comment, 1 or 2. I know you are saying no. Yes, moderator. I would want to give you just 1 or 2 remarks, because I don't want to miss an opportunity that you are here to talk. I know you want to participate to hear, but at some point. Now, the people who are here, they are happy that you buyile. The people here, they are happy that you buyile. So there is no way that we can have a national official. There's no way we can have a national official of the ANC amongst us and not be given an opportunity to say anything. It will not be within the culture of the organization. But also in Safudes, you support Apaku, transition school. Over to you, National Chairperson, Comrade Cde Gwede Mantashe. Thank you.
Good morning. People who know me always remember that I always write what I want to say. Now I'm just ambushed to say something. But because we must talk about energy, there are a few things that we should really resolve. There's load shedding. Is it an energy crisis? Is it a base load crisis? Is it a peaking crisis? So we must resolve that. I think brains here are able to take us through all those. Number two, can renewables on their own resolve the load shedding crisis? I don't want to express a view. I have a very strong view on this matter. I'm sure many have read in the Mail and Guardian that I've been given a very important title of being a polluter of the year. Yeah, because people believe that I'm just a coal fundamentalist. I'm not a coal fundamentalist. I'm a very balanced energy thinker. I'm not an engineer, but I think broadly about energy because I know that energy is a catalyst for economic growth and economic development. If you don't have energy, you can't grow. If you have load shedding, you will close butcheries and other small businesses that depend on energy for their business. So I'm quite happy that you have given me this. Actually, I gave myself a responsibility to be a moderator. That's why I'm seated there. Today I'm moderating. I will leave at a particular point to go to Ridgersburg. But I'm very happy to be here. I want to listen to the experts. I'm not going to engage you today. I have my own time to do that. But I want you to help us find solutions. We can't go on like this. And one of the issues, Marocha, as a former CEO of ESCOM, we have 20,000 megawatts that are connected, not decommissioned, but give us no energy. How do we resolve that? Those are the questions that we must confront. We must not be diplomatic about them. We must talk about them because if we cut to the chase, we are likely to find the solution. When we drafted the IRP, we predicted that energy availability factor for ESCOM was 75%. It is today 59%. Something is not right. The experts must tell us what has gone wrong to be at that level. So all those issues, Mamluku, will have to be answered here today. I'm going to be sitting there. I have a notebook, I have a pen. I'm going to be taking copious notes. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, National Chair. I think I'm going to sit down now so that we can start with the major issue that why we are here, asking our colleagues who are here to assist. I'm going to start with DG Mbele. DG, issues that people raise in the public domain is that there's policy uncertainty, one, in the energy space. There's challenges of unpredictability. For example, we have the IRP that was developed in 2019, but already today we are sitting and talking about the review of the IRP. Now, in terms of the long term of planning, building in an energy, let's say power plant or anything, the time that we take in terms of planning, does it give us a necessary chance for our markets, those who want to invest, and those that are our planners to help us in this process? But firstly, do we have policy uncertainty? And do we have policy gaps as they exist?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Program Director. Good morning, everyone, and all protocol observed. It is my view that we don't necessarily have policy uncertainty, but we do have policies in place that have been promulgated to allow for additional generation capacity or the management of the space that we operate in. Yes, things change on a regular basis, and those policies every now and then needs to be reviewed and be adapted to deal with prevailing conditions. Specifically talking to the IRP and the planning horizon or the planning cycle, the development and implementation of energy projects, they generally have a long lead period. For example, construction of a typical, let's take renewable energy project, or from concept to implementation can take anything between 18 and 36 months. And so you can imagine that if you've got a plan that is going to change in less than that duration, that on its own is going to create policy uncertainty. It is my view that when you do long-term planning, the plan must be robust enough to be adapted for the changing conditions. Specifically talking to the IRP, everyone talks about the IRP being outdated. But those that have read the IRP, they would have noticed that in the IRP, the possibility of ESCOM energy availability factor going below what was predicted was actually covered. It talks about, one of the things that the IRP mentioned is that if you look at the load profile and the current plant capacity, if we have to add new generation capacity between now and 2030, taking into account the need to reduce emissions, what we need to be throwing at the problem is mainly renewable energy, gas, and some form of storage. And it goes further to indicate that regardless of what you do, that mix remains the same going forward. So in terms of dealing with the energy availability factor, it's a matter of accelerating or decelerating the implementation of those plans. And hence, at the department level, you'd realize that what we have done now is we are moving with speed to implement the rest of the IRP, because the gap that we see today, that would have probably been the gap, the magnitude would have been the gap by 2030, is actually the problem today, because the base, which is the ESCOM plant, is not holding. But I also have to indicate that in terms of the plan, the plan has always recognized that there is a lag in terms of power generation, that there is a time that is required to put in place new generation capacity. So in terms of closing the short-term gap, you obviously have to focus on what you have, which is basically the capacity that you have already connected on the system. Let me stop there.
Thank you very much, DG. Colleagues who are managing the platform, virtual platforms, please assist us by accepting people. I keep on getting messages that they are not being accepted on the platform. Just assist us, please. Moving to Dr. Maroha, as National Chair was saying, you've been on ESCOM. Assist us in just contextualizing this problem that we have today. DG Mbele just takes us to say, when we did the IRP, there was some level of understanding that we'll have some challenges. You've been in ESCOM, you are an energy expert, you've been quite vocal on some of the issues. If you can contextualize the problem and perhaps start saying, where have we gone wrong? So that when we come back, then say, this is where we need to go. Over to you.
Yeah, I think contextualizing the problem maybe is also giving a context to the evolution of the energy system, which is represented by ESCOM as a utility. Many of you may or may not know that in March, ESCOM will be turning 100 years. Right? Started in 1923, March of 1923, so it's going to be 100 years. When you look at the evolution of the industrial development of South Africa, entities like ESCOM were built specifically to become platforms of economic development based on abundant energy, cheap and secure energy. So when we talk today about economic development and energy security, we talk to the evolution, the history, and the foundational principle of the energy system called ESCOM. When you go back before 1923, you find a country that is partly, industrialized, but mostly farm-bound economy. But after the formation of these entities, ESCOM, IDC, Sasol, Transnet, over the first 50 years of the Union of South Africa, you find a South Africa that becomes a world-class industrial economy, beginning to actually play its role in the world. So the connection between utility companies and industrial development is very key, and energy security is at the center. And part of the formula for ESCOM, up until 2002, the idea was that ESCOM will produce electricity not for profit nor loss. Its main mission is to create an energy foundation on which industrialization can happen, economic development can happen. We changed that in 2002 for good reason, to begin to make it a normal corporate. So I say those things to give the context that when we look at the energy issue, it cannot be short-term issues. It cannot be, let's solve this thing today in the next two months. It has to be, what is our economic vision? And that economic vision that must be underpinned by the energy vision that the energy system should give. Now, coming back to what is wrong today, and I think just to summarize that, going into the detail. What is wrong today is that we've got a baseload coal-fired power station of ESCOM, which is supposed to perform at an expected percentage of about 70 to 75%, and is actually operating at 50%. Any other discussion, unless you deal with the solution to that crisis, any other thing will not bring us closer to a solution. So we need to firstly acknowledge the nub of the problem. Now, many reasons have been given. I think we'll go into them to say old plants, sabotage, maintenance. However, whatever the problem is, for me is, unless we solve this baseload crisis in the short to medium term, we may not see even the long term. We may not even see the transition. Because in the end, we are bleeding now, and the economy is bleeding now. So for me, if I can just summarize in terms of what the nub of the problem is, solving this baseload coal fleet. In my view, which still have value, in my view, it still have longevity. The issue is budget, focus, and execution. That will be my opening remarks.
Thank you very much. Quite interesting as well, as we follow. I think listening to Ndati Maroga, we do hear it's a long term. We have to solve the waste load. Now, maybe as I move to Prof. Mbaweli, leveraging on base load, for example, if we look at this, and mindful that ours is an energy mix, what are the best ways of introducing some of these other sources of energy into our grids, but also both in terms of grid and off-grid, but also in terms of ensuring that we have a sustainability of energy supply, security of energy supply. So just how do we introduce that, taking from what Ndati Maroga said?
Thank you, Chairperson. And I agree with the two previous speakers. We need to solve the issue of the failing coal fleet. You know, to answer your question, the best way in any power system is to plan. Nothing beats planning. And in South Africa, we have the compact. The DG talked about the integrated resource plan, which is our compact, because it goes through a robust planning process where we look at the cost of generation for the various technologies. It's based on the least cost technology, and we also look at the issues around emissions that we need to deal with. And those are some of the key aspects that go into the IRP. There's quite a lot of other aspects that we look at when we promulgate the IRP. So it goes back to planning, and once that plan is in place, and I'm very happy, I'm not praising the chair because I'm just saying it because he's doing it. Since the publication of the IRP 2019, the minister has been implementing this quite well, in my view. He's been going through the various bids, introducing new generation capacity from renewables in line with the IRP. He has done very well on that, and I think we must give him a hand of applause for that. Now, going forward, I wouldn't stop talking before talking about the coal fleet that has been failing us, and kind of debunking some of the talks out there, because there's this perception that load shedding is because of renewable energy. That is not true. Load shedding is not because of renewable energy. The minimum renewable energy that we have online now is actually assisting us to avoid higher stages of load shedding. And my panelists will agree with me on that. Load shedding is basically because of the failing fleet. There are various reasons that have been given. And this morning, I said this in the holding room with the ministers, that my view is that we need to identify those power stations that will still give us longevity. We know the ones that will not give us longevity, and then go on a massive renewal of those power stations as opposed to maintenance. Yes, if you have coal power stations and you maintain them properly, those power stations can run for more than 100 years without giving you much problems. But here we're facing a different animal, a different problem where some of these power stations have not been properly maintained in the past. So what needs to happen is basically renewal. It's like running your car without maintaining it. And a few years down the line, you want to say, I want to now start maintaining this car. The first thing that you need to do is to renew it and then maintain it going forward. So my view is that we need to make funding available for proper renewal of the coal fleet, while we continue with the planning and introducing new generation capacity from renewable energy. And the minister, the national chair, asked one of the key questions when he was up here, to say, can renewable energy on their own provide a solution to the current situation, to the current crisis? And the answer is a straight no. No single energy source can provide a solution to the current crisis. The solution is to fix the current fleet, like what the others are saying, while introducing renewable energy to support the current fleet, and also to meet our climate goals. And those are very important, because I've had discussions in the public domain where people say, forget about climate change. As I was driving here from Joburg to Bloemfontein yesterday, I just heard that in KZN they introduced an alert level 9 in terms of disaster management. And that was because they anticipated that there will be floods. And those are some of the challenges that come with global warming. And the most affected people, unfortunately, are the poor. they build their houses or their settlements in flood lines. So when there are floods, they are washed away, they die, and all those kind of things. So we need to deal with this particular issue. The rich people, they can build houses on mountains, like in Gordon's Bay, next to where I live at the moment, and they're not affected by floods. And it's not only floods, Chair, it's a number of other things. So to solve the current problem, there's also the plan that was announced by the President, which opens up the energy space. And one of the things that I was telling Mr. Maroja last night is that I'm worried that the President announced this good plan, right? But he announced and then he left. And what the country sees is rolling blackouts. So to the general society, this plan is not working because we're seeing stage 6 load shedding. And the President is nowhere, nobody is there to explain what happened to the President's plan. And I've engaged this office on these particular matters. Because in the background, there's quite a lot of work that is being done, although some of us may not be allowed to say what exactly is being done. My DG is here now, he's going to get me in trouble if I say a lot. But just at a high level, we've got 7 work streams that have been created by the President. And those work streams are hard at work looking at various issues to say what is it that we can do in line with the President's plan, renewal of some of this coal fleet, the bringing in of new generation capacity, which the Minister has been doing, looking at what is the role of small-scale embedded generation, for instance, what is the role of big battery storage facilities. And one of the things that I've said with the engineers working on some of these things was, can't you look at the impact of battery storage facilities in homes with solar PV, dispatchable power during when the system is constrained? Instead of saying government must spend billions of rands building these big batteries, why can't we incentivize households to say, put solar PV, put your small battery there, get whatever you can get from your PV. When the system is constrained, dispatch this power, and this will be the incentive. When you start using from the grid, for instance, we will then give you discount. Then your payback period for your battery goes down, lower, and everybody benefits. Minister, I can talk the whole day. I'm a professor.
I'm going to ask, maybe, DG Mpele, note that point. I'm going to come back to you because I know this has been some of the discussions that we had previously. We'll look into it. Colleagues, if we can move to the online, help me while I'm sending my question to Osbetha. I'm listening to you, Prof. You talk about the renewable space, but more again, communication. What came out as well, I think for us as well, communication, that we sometimes announce things we don't follow through, but also there isn't clarity in what we are trying to do, how we are going to do it, so that everybody's on the same page and we leave people behind. But more importantly, the link that you bring with communities as well. And that's what I want to bring Betha on. That as we talk about, for example, the issue of base load, moving away from the issue of just transition, for example, that when we look at coal mines, coal plants, in terms of job creation, is huge numbers of people that get employed, but also communities as we're talking about the value chain. Now, how do we ensure, especially as an organization that is led as of electrical engineers of women, but more around community involvement? If, Betha, you can tell us about what are the things that are concerning in those areas as we deal with issues around just transition, but also around the energy availability factors and energy security.
Thank you very much, and all protocol observed. And thank you to the colleagues that have already painted the context for the conversation, especially around the key considerations of our energy security conundrum. You know, when we talk about the just energy transition, we have to sit back and really rethink our approach. We get the sense that South Africa is hastily, almost wanting to be a leader in just energy transition. At a time when our economy in dire straits, we are in an extraordinarily challenging place because of our failing fleet to meet the energy availability factor that would enable economic growth. And so it begs the question, how are we creating a just energy transition that is locally relevant and accommodates the context of our socio-economic status? We have to be very bold. And as I was contemplating this talk, I picked up on a few pronouncements by the African Union and by the International Energy Agency, and these are very exciting. And I just want to quote this before I answer your question directly. Led by the African Union Commission in collaboration with other Pan-African institutions, the common position stipulates that Africa will continue to deploy all forms of its abundant energy resources, including renewable and non-renewable energy, to address energy demand. Gas, green and low carbon hydrogen, nuclear energy will therefore be expected to play a crucial role in expanding modern energy access in the short to medium term, while enhancing the uptake of renewables in the long term for low carbon and climate resilient trajectory. The AU has determined that its members on the continent will use its abundant resources, resources that are abundant in their domestic markets, to ensure that they have security of supply. Another quote that is very interesting says, "Everyone is keeping their climate targets, but it's true that when you face the dilemma to keep the lights on or decrease carbon emissions, the choice is to keep the lights on." And this was stated by the International Energy Agency as Germany was contemplating resuscitating its coal-fired power stations to deal with their energy crisis. And we have seen reports that indicate that the Global West is resuscitating their fossil fuel resources to deal with their energy crisis. We have an energy crisis of our own that requires us not to be compelled or to be pushed by any other external powers to move away from our abundant resources. And we should be bold to state that we require base load from coal. We require that to resuscitate our economy, to safeguard our economy, because there's a direct link between electricity sales and economic growth, as Mr. Marocha has already highlighted. And so we cannot be unclear or uncertain or give mixed messages about where we stand as a country. We are in a place that is scary from an economic basis. In fact, you want to ask, what part of our soul must be reignited for us to boldly stand by the policies that we have put in place and execute them steadfastly to ensure, to secure our economic growth? Now, this brings us to the question that you have asked. When we have determined our position, and we have boldly stated that we will use the resources available to us to boost our base load, to boost our generation capacity, we can communicate a very clear message about the shape of our just energy transition. The just element of the transition, the energy transition, only our communities, because we have a tendency to assume that the professional community understands what the just energy transition is, and it is not true. We need to roll out a nationwide just energy transition orientation and
I'm not sure
campaign.
what's happening with Bethlehem.
Private sector, Can you still hear me?
Yeah, it was a bit breaking,
I-
Bertha. Yeah, we seem to have gotten you back. Are we fine? Okay, proceed.
Okay. Needs to roll out. I'm saying that we have a tendency to assume that the professional community understands in detail what a just any roll out an orientation and an education campaign that educates our citizens on what the just energy transition is. The just element or the just component of the energy transition also touches on climate justice. South Africa does not feature in the top 10 of global carbon dioxide emitters. And so the program that we execute should not match those of the industrialized economies that are emitting a greater percentage of carbon dioxide. We should look at a locally relevant just energy transition that recognizes the share of burden of emissions with our trading partners and also recognizes the beneficiation of the resources that are abundant in our domestic market, empowering our communities to participate in the value chains as value-adding enterprises, as employees. We should not be hasty to communicate a message that threatens employment in the coal mining sector, threatens employment in the agricultural sector, in the networked industries. We have to be very clear in our pronouncement to ensure that our communities are secured, that they will not be put at a disadvantage because they're already suffering with state of economy as we are. So how do we do this? In the energy sector alone, there is over 20 industry organizations that are looking at various segments of the various value chains that drive energy generation, transmission and distribution. Sure that we communicate messages that are contextually relevant. Currently, what we have communicated and what we are communicating and what we see, the transition that matches what the West requires of us in order for us to secure grants or concession loans from them, but not plans that are relevant for our local markets.
I'm going to ask you to switch off the video, Bertha. Maybe it can come back because you keep on breaking now. I don't know if you are done. Okay, we'll come back to her if we can just sort out and communicate from the technical team. And then I'm going to ask just one round to the panel. Members of the party or the participants can be ready with their questions. We're going to have roving mics on the floor. I think part of what I'm picking up from what Bertha is raising is around perhaps the issue to say, the question that we normally even get, did we rush in terms of our energy transition? Our plans, are they faster? At what pace will it be that is suitable for our communities and our country's development? I think that's what she's raising more in order to preserve the jobs. But again, those of us, for example, as we say, you'd have heard that yesterday we had a threat of disasters in Pretoria we had. So those of us who have to deal with the aftermath of disasters as well would want to understand, how do we find a balance? Because that's part of what is important for us. Finding a balance of not being left behind in terms of responding to the issues of climate change and not ignoring, because that affects us. Yes, we might not be the highest emitters, but we've committed to the Paris Agreement that we will transit There is a framework of just transition, for example. Is it addressing the issues that we are looking for? I think some of the issues that I would like to throw as well, as we are going into the discussions with the panels. But more importantly for me, I mean, listening to the issues, and I want to come back to Jacob Maroja around the issue that, one, we have a problem in terms of the base load. Two, the issue of the installed capacity versus energy availability, what it can provide for us. And also the issue, maybe if you can even touch, what is to be done, because part of the argument is that some of these power plants, their lifespan in reality has come to an end. So argument that there's nothing much you can drill out of these power plants. They've served their purpose, and therefore the conversations around they've got to be able to be closed and finding what would be sustainable for us to provide energy. So that's what I just want to hear from you as we do. What is it that we need to do, that we can do to assist us in this area in terms of our power plants? What becomes the solution? What is it that we need to do?
Okay. I think firstly, let me deal with the issue of coal versus renewable, because it's also at the center of our discussion. At the base technology level, we are talking about power generation based on rotating machines. Coal is just happened to be one of them. When you talk to nuclear, it's rotating machines that finally produce the electricity. When you talk to hydro, it's rotating machines. When you talk to gas, biomass is rotating machines. The modern grid has been built on rotating machines. And it's controllable rotating machines. So that's how the modern power grid has been built on. So the ability to produce electricity in a stable, consistent way has been based on the technology which is based on controllable rotating machines, to bring it to the basic technology. What we are now faced in is the emergence of what is called weather-dependent resources, which is mainly solar and wind. Now, they come with benefits, but they come with limits. What are the benefits? Climate change, cheaper. But what are the limits? The limits with weather-dependent sources is that you depend on the weather gods for your electricity. But when they work together with controllable, currently, you can deal with when the sun goes down, when the wind is not blowing, you are able to use your controllable rotating machines to bring it, and not to bring the system into balance. The problem is, for now, the balance and they work together. The problem, and it's a global problem, when we move more into higher penetration of weather-dependent resources and reduce our rotating machines, some of the benefit of the rotating machines we're going to miss. So what is it in the future we're going to put in our system to compensate what we're going to miss with the rotating machines? So it must never be coal versus renewable. It's technology at the basic, rotating machines, weather-dependent resources, and each of them have got scope and limits, and when you take them forward, you must understand and integrate and make sure that when you move from one to the other, you've understood the jigsaw puzzle. That's the first thing that I think I needed to understand. So, on that basis, in the absence of the future aspects of renewables that could compensate for dispatchable rotating machines, we are stuck with sorting out our rotating machines. That's the fundamental issue. Now, what can be done? Now, you've asked a pertinent question. Have our coal fleet come to end of life? And I want to say as a principle, machines don't behave like human beings, where you say now at 63, retire, at 70 is your life expectancy. In theory, when you fly an aeroplane, you may be flying an aeroplane that is 60 years old. The theory about machines is not about just age. It's about the care of that machine over its life. And in the end, it's also about budget. Of course, as they get older, they may need more money, but as long as the economics make sense, you can keep it going as long as it can run. You go to Cuba, you'll see motor cars that are 60 years old because they've built an ecosystem in Cuba to run old motor cars for a long time. So our average fleet is not old in the bigger scheme of things. The question could be, did we take care of them properly? And what will it take to make them to improve from the current average of about 50, not 59 national chair, we are now almost at 50%, to take it towards 70%, because if you do that, you bring enough capacity to deal with most of load shedding. For me, let's remove the issue of age. Let's say, what will it take technically to bring this machine to an acceptable level of performance, both from a budget perspective, a resource perspective. And lastly, and I think this is another thing that I think is emerging, while you can have the money and the technical expertise, the management ecosystem of our generation capacity needs to be looked at. And it's an ecosystem, not just managers here, it's an ecosystem to be able to understand the machines, to interface with the entire coal industry. See, Eskom, its coal requirements is almost 50% of the entire coal production of the country. Eskom as a generation entity is the 10th largest. Now, when you run that ecosystem, you must respect its size, its nuance. So restoring that ecosystem, the knowledge ecosystem to run this important industrial formation, which is as big as it gets in the world, is important. So to answer your question, we must look at all of those things, but the issue of age, I contest on the basis that we shouldn't just throw the age issue without understanding the dynamic of how you deal with industrial machines. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it goes with the issue as they mature with age, and also the contestation of how do we, because we can expand, we can extend the lifetime. We've done it with Kuber, but what it would take, I think that's what you are sending. Are we prepared to take the responsibilities, the risks that are associated, but put budgets that are required to be able to get the plans to run? That's what you are mainly saying to us in terms of the context, because you're saying they can be able to. Maybe let me move to Prof. Prof, and I'm going to tap in your capacity as research, the R&D part of it. Yesterday, we were having discussions. For example, the deputy chair of Mpumalanga in conference says to us, don't close our plants, but can you go and find these technologies that can capture the air so that we are able to still continue with our economic activities and not kill our communities. Now, I would want to tap into your space of research and development that has been done to assist us. What is available? Because, for example, you look at the renewables, and we see that, yes, the energy availability for renewables is lower, but also because of the challenges of battery storage and the availability. So if you can take us through, that's what I'm saying, I'm going to take advantage of your presence here, just to share in terms of the work that is being done around R&D in this area, because I think South Africa has done quite well, but we've not been able to commercialize, as we say every time, what we do in terms of R&D and be able to implement in that regard. And how do we expand and close the gaps? Because even the issue for me, I've always said, part of the challenge we have in the energy space and the discussions around energy are always contaminated by competition. Almost, as you are saying, Jacob is saying, whether it's coal versus renewable, when it's not supposed to be. And that's why the concept of energy mix has always been what we prefer. But you find that that contaminates to a point that it impacts even on the solutions that we want to find. Because it's either you are labeled, like Minister Mantashe said, a coal fundamentalist or a renewable person. And we could be able to find a neutrality in terms of them supporting each other, as Jacob is saying, in the input. But take us through some of the work that is being done in R&D to assist us bridge this area, because that's one of the things, even in the ANC, we are worried about being consumers of technologies and not developers of technologies as we go into the future.
Thank you, Chair. I'll also take advantage and expand on some of the things that Jacob talked about when it comes to grid services that are supported by, that are provided by rotating machines, because there's a lot of research that has been done in that area in South Africa. So we've got capacity in terms of research in the country. We've been slow in terms of taking our research products into the market. So let me start with the actual question. What research has been done in terms of making basically the coal sector cleaner? So in South Africa, we have the Department of Science and Innovation that does a lot of research. I'm currently the head of the Energy Secretariat at SANEDI. The Energy Secretariat was established by the Department of Science and Innovation within SANEDI to deal with energy research in general. And we don't talk only about renewables. We've got renewables. We've got a particular program that is specific on the coal sector, which is called the Coal CO2 to X program. And that program, although it's at its infancy stage, it has done quite a lot of work in terms of carbon capture. So basically what we're doing in that program is to capture the CO2 or the flue gases, the gases that come out of burning coal and other fossil fuels, and then turn them into something useful. In this case, we're looking at ammonia, we're looking at fertilizer, we're looking at sulfuric acid that you can later use for other things. So in the past, research has always been about carbon capture and storage, which basically means that we would then capture these gases and drill them down back into the earth. Now we're saying, instead of doing that, going through that process, we should rather capture this and then use it elsewhere. This is what they've started doing in some of the European countries. Now, that program sits at SANEDI. It sits under my watch now. I started there yesterday. Initially, I was running the renewable energy program, which is also the DSI renewable energy program. Now, in terms of additional technologies that we've been looking at as a country, again through the DSI or the Department of Science and Innovation program, we've got a program called Hydrogen South Africa. And that program, it gets a parliamentary grant. We've spent more than R1 billion, Minister, on that program, developing technologies. South Africa has got platinum group minerals. And these minerals are very important when it comes to exploitation of the hydrogen industry, because that's where you can get your membranes for splitting water into hydrogen and oxygen, and then you can take the hydrogen and use it to provide energy in various forms. So we have the IP developed in South Africa for the membranes. What we have been talking to other international partners, for instance, I was in the UK during the state visit by the President with Minister Nzimande, and we were engaging the UK government. The UK government is going to invest 450 billion British pounds in South Africa for production of green hydrogen. And they want to use that to meet their climate goals. What they told us was that you guys, you've got a lot of renewable energy resources. You've got land. you've got water by the ocean. We want to take advantage of that and come and produce this green hydrogen and then ship it back to the UK. The question is, what do we do as South Africa? How do we then link that to the just energy transition that we're talking about? How do we ensure that the workers in the mines, in the coal mines, the coal transporters, the small-scale coal miners, how do we ensure that they participate in this case? And that's where, if we miss this ball and we don't plan properly, we will end up, talking about this technology over the other. Yesterday, and I'm concluding, Minister, last night when we had the dinner with Mr. Maroja, I gave a simple example. I visited Germany.
I love it that when we had our conference,
Yes.
you had your own conference.
We had our own conference. and I gave him a simple example. I said, I visited Germany, I think it was 1999, if I'm not mistaken. 2009, if I'm not mistaken, sorry. And I landed at the airport, and the taxi driver picked me up. As we were driving to the hotel, the taxi driver asked me, Prof, can I stop? By then I was still doctor, I think. Doc, can I stop here for a few minutes? I want to check something. We were driving past a wind farm, lots of wind turbines. It was my first time to see these turbines. In reality, I used to talk a lot about them. Now, when we stopped, I said to him, well, while you do whatever you're doing, you must first take me a nice photo with these things. So he took me a nice photo, and then he was on the phone. When I looked, there was one turbine that was standing, not turning. And after some time, that turbine started turning. And then he said to me, now we can go. As we were going, I said, but what's happening? Then that taxi driver said to me, we had a scheme that involves people when we build these turbines, where we formed, in South Africa, we would call them cooperatives, where we formed these cooperatives for the workers that were impacted by what we were doing. And that turbine that was not turning is my turbine. It's in my cooperative, that turbine. Now, what are we doing in South Africa? We're disrupting the sector, the energy sector. And then we bring in people who are not involved in the sector, who are not impacted by the sector. That is wrong. What we should be doing, in my view, when we disrupt this sector, we must absorb these people into the new industries that we are building. We must engage in industrialization of the sector using locally developed technology with partners, in partnership with the international community. Now, when you do that, you will have a very good conversation with the miner, because the miner is going to be in a consortia that is owning a wind turbine that's sitting somewhere and making money. So those are the kind of things that we need to start thinking about. The same thing happened when I went to recently, I think it was in last month or so, when I went to Holland. I was shown turbines that are owned by similar kind of setups. Now, I was saying last night, we have the DFIs, we have the DBSA, we have the IDCs of this world, we have the PICs of this world. When Britain says to us, we're coming to build this hydrogen thing, we know the people who will be impacted who are working in the sector. Why don't we get them organized in a particular manner or in a particular structure and get equity funding for them, not for Samson who is working as a professor somewhere else? And then get that equity funding for them. Let them own shares in the British-owned setup. Let them benefit from these resources that we have, and benefit the people in the sector first. The people who are outside the sector have got money, they will come and buy in by themselves. Thank you, Minister.
No, thanks a lot, Prof. Let me just, as we wrap up the session so that I can open for the floor. DG, there are quite a lot of issues that are raised here. Some of them share your experiences. Bertha spoke about I think it's Prof who spoke about the possibility of responding to household, allowing them to generate in terms of energy. But there's issues around plants, extension and the work around that. I think the issue that Prof talks about goes into even the areas of work of NERSA, the licensing space. But I know you do quite a lot of work in terms of energy, because sometimes it's not known that the Department of Energy still does off-grid solutions for household. At some point you did incentives as the department. When we had challenges around solar and alternative, I think there's quite a number of issues that are here. Maybe just share with us what is the department and what, from government point of view, has been the interventions that are supporting, while we're going to open for the floor and get Beth as well to make some comments.
Okay. Maybe let me, in terms of the space and opening up for the public, what the department has done over a number of years was to open up the space and ease the requirements in terms of people putting in place their own power generation or generation capacity. And I guess many of the people here will be aware that in some municipalities, consumers are already able to sell whatever electricity that they have back to the utility. I think Cape Town is one of those municipalities where you are able to do that. There are discussions, because the current mechanisms that are in place are almost what I'll call like a zero-sum game. There is not necessarily a return in terms of what you get back from the system. We are currently having discussions around issues of net billing, net metering, and as well as feed-in tariff, which will then enable us to actually encourage or stimulate or make it possible for more people to put these solutions on the roofs. I'm also aware that a number of banks are already putting packages in place for those with bonded houses to be able to come and allow you to put rooftop solar PV, including battery storage, and for you to be able to sell access to the grid. So there are discussions in that regard. In terms of deploying the technologies for the users, I mean, the government does fund a program where specifically in deep rural areas where we provide, without additional cost to households, solar panel and battery for rural communities that are off-grid. So there are already schemes like that. There is a scheme that the department is working with DSI to pilot in KZN for a microgrid, which is based on fuel cells. So there are a number of initiatives that are being looked at. And maybe just to touch on the point that the Prof has raised around allowing for participation by local communities. In the current renewable energy or the current independent power producer programs that we do run, I think it's important for one to highlight that using the triple PFA, one of the requirements that we've put in place is that all those projects must minimum have 49% local ownership, the joint venture. That's the one part. The second part that we insist on those projects is that at the present moment, I think it's about 5% must be women participation. We also insist on local communities within a certain radius of those particular projects. What I think we need to focus on and we need to put our minds together around is in terms of the funding that you are talking about, because the reality is in a lot of these projects, people will be included, but the fact that people don't have the capital to put into the projects, they depend on either the project owners or other sponsors to fund them. And the reality is that people then go for 10, 15 years without necessarily getting anything from, you're part of the ownership, but you're not getting anything from the projects. So those are some of the discussions that, as you rightly indicated, that we should be having with the DFIs to say, how do we make sure that we improve on this? With your permission, Facilitator, I just want to also comment on one issue. And this is the issue around how we really engage around the solutions in this space. I think the debates get polarized because we tend to pit, I think rightfully, as was indicated, one technology over the other. I think from a department point of view, we don't really necessarily want to talk about renewable energy. Renewable energy is one form of clean energy. We prefer to talk about clean energy sources. And once you talk about clean energy sources, it's renewable energy. You start talking about nuclear. You start talking about the possibility of putting in place mechanisms to allow fossil fuels to play, but in a cleaner form. So the discussion and our view is to say we need to move to cleaner forms of energy. And when we start looking at it that way, it opens a space for innovation, because then it's not basically closing out or locking out other solutions that are potential solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. You want to say something?
No, I think there are two issues that the colleagues have said, which I think is an important
We shouldn't discourage, disadvantage Bertha because she's on virtual.
Oh, okay.
So we must make sure that we also allow her,
Yeah.
but proceed.
So I think the biggest issue in South Africa in the just transition, we've put coal as a problem. But for instance, the green hydrogen, right, can happen independently of other things, because what you are doing, you are using your resources to produce hydrogen that becomes an international commodity. And another example of that kind of thing is that China supplies almost 90% of all renewables, but is still increasing its coal. So its play in the international market of renewables was not pitting its coal against renewable. In fact, it's using coal to produce most of the renewable products that they sell in the international market. So we must remove the sting around it's the anti-coal plan, but talk about things that we can do which don't necessarily disadvantage coal. That's the thing that I wanted to put to the fore.
Okay. Maybe just, thank you very much, National Chair. We know you've got your mobilization work for January 8 celebrations. Thank you very much for joining us, and we do appreciate as National Chair takes his leave of the dialogue. Let me ask Bertha, and then we go on the floor. Bertha, the issue you are leading in terms of women in electricity, and you know that I'm passionate about this sector of work. Just tell me, are these conversations, and share with us, are these conversations held with this important stakeholder, and what are the issues that are coming through? Colleagues who are having the roving mic, if you can start indicating where you are, so that when I come back from here, I'm able to move into space. Do we have Bertha online? Okay, if the technical team can assist me with her. The first person who's going to speak, let me look. I've got a hand here.
Am I audible?
Okay, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Yes. All right. So I want to, just before I answer the question on gender mainstreaming, because I'm understanding that your question is to ask how are we finding the mainstreaming of women in these conversations. The first, before DG has articulated, and I think it's critical for creating clarity in the market, that we start speaking audibly and boldly about clean sources of energy and not pit technologies against. I think what is lacking is the pronunciation in the public fora on clean sources of energy that would liberate South Africa to look at innovations around different forms of energy. I just wanted to highlight that. In terms of mainstreaming women in power sectors, as we
Bertha, we are battling still.
The one challenge that is an organization that's dedicated to the gender mainstreams. There's a perfectly, I am worried that you can't hear me.
Yeah, we are actually battling because you break through, like we can't hear full sentences. I'm not so sure whether it's us this side, it's your network. Let me just, I'll give the floor to those who want to participate. Can I ask Cde to make some comments on the petroleum side as well? I've got two hands, actually three ladies. 1, 2, 3 that I've noted. Okay. And for next to Cde as well. He will make, okay. Where are the roving mics? Start there at the first here. So I've got 4 hands that I've noted, and then I'll come to the next round. Please introduce yourself and then get to the point. If it's a question, do indicate who is the question directed to. If it's a comment, but also I'm going to request that we don't deliver keynote speeches, get to the point within a minute so that we can have more conversation with everybody else. Thanks.
Shall I start? Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, to our esteemed guests. I must say today I'm feeling like a kid in a candy store with all our esteemed panels. And I am going to start with the DG. I like that you...
So?
Oh yes, my name is Klolohelo Motsamai and I hail here from the Free State Bloemfontein. I also serve in the same organization as Bertha Dlamini, African Women in Energy and Power. And I'm also the founder of She in Energy Africa. It's a non-profit organization here in the Free State. My question, as I said, will first be directed to something. I think the development with the legislated market through the Renewable Energy Independent Power Producers Program, the bid window 6, where we've just seen now the legal signing of these IPPs. It's exciting. We are in the Free State, and ours, as it stands, it's still much a healthy grid. We have constraints in the Northern Cape, but the Free State, in terms of grid capacity, is still sitting very much healthily. And it's exciting to hear how 40% go to local companies, 5% to women-owned companies. But we have case in point through the Northern Cape. It is not the case. Everything is just on paper. But years later, we still have startups in the energy sector where we're not benefiting from. And then my second question, also the DG, where he made mention of net metering solution, and I would be.
Yeah.
Okay, let's. Is this audible now? I'm slightly nervous. Yes, and you mentioned the talk on net metering solutions, tariff setting, but the reality also with that is when we talk SSEG, there's contention through our municipalities where you come in as a startup or an entrepreneur in the energy sector, solar, PV. The contention is around revenue loss with the municipality. And I'd just like to hear your input on that to say, how do we address that and how do we start working with our municipalities to see that we are not the enemies here, but we are actually working for a common goal? And then the last question will be directed to Prof. It's with the regulation on energy performance certificate, and I think we can't talk supply without addressing, demand. And energy efficiency, it's still very much integral to energy security. And I must say, it was slightly disappointing to see how now, with a regulation that was mandated in 2020, the policymaker DMERE came back to say that a deadline that was supposed to be on the 7th of December has now been extended with additional 3 years, on energy performance certificate, and it's just through a spanner in the works. And I'd just like to know what informed that, and what some of the things that were taken into consideration to have such a lengthy extension with this regulation. And last but certainly least, still on Prof, from an R&D point of view, microgrids. We talk green hydrogen, it's exciting, as a feedstock with the production using renewable energy VREs. But can we talk the just transition without talking energy poverty? And I think with the knowledge that I've gained so far in terms of microgrids, I see the technology being able to address energy poverty. And I would also like to hear Professor's thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Number 2, next table.
Thank you very much. My name is Nogutula Chakani. I'm from the ANC Youth League, and I'm a development economist by profession, a leftist development economist at that. My question is just directed to the panel, as is. I'm not going to specify who should answer. I think that the Presidential Climate Commission transition framework actually tried to make an assertion on addressing this matter of how this just transition will address the livelihoods of those who rely on the coal mining. And I think it's important to note that just transition is not only about the coal value chain, as most of our speakers have alluded today, because there is an agricultural sector and an auto industry which are heavily impacted. So what then becomes our plan for those communities, and what is government's plan on closing the gap of the unemployment rate and the unequal opportunities with this transition? Because any transition that seeks to take away jobs of many simply just becomes an unjust transition. And with what Prof was saying, realistically, will the sector be able to absorb and sustain all those people that are already within the sector as miners and so on, for them to be at least converted into cooperatives, as he learned in Germany? So what is our plan as government in that regard? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think let's move to this table, the chairperson of SAWIC in Free State.
Thank you so much, Minister. My name is Palisa Mfuke. I'm the former chairperson of SAWIC in the Free State. Maybe let me just acknowledge that the discussion today is very exciting, and some parts are very high level for us as SMMEs. However, as a leader in the society, I just want to maybe ask if the panel has a plan on how to involve SMMEs in this just energy transaction, particularly women and youth, because a lot of times they are often left behind. So with issues of compliance and access to information, where can they access that information? So that we ready ourselves, so that when these trains start moving, we are able to partake as well. The other thing is that maybe I can just highlight that as SAWIC in the Free State, we are more than willing to partner with whoever for the benefit of our women in the Free State. So as and when you are looking for these strategic partners and SMMEs, please do consider us, and we can give you our details so that we can, in fact, we are looking forward to partnering, not for only ourselves as women, but for our kids as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move to the next hand, next to Tsiriso, the gentleman next to Tsiriso, if we can give him. OC, turn back, please. OC, oh, the mic, yeah. I thought you were giving that table. And then we'll take last one at the back. That, yeah, yes. And then behind him after that, that will be the last ones, and then we go.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to ask question. My name is Rodney Mapanga from Black Energy Professional.
Can we increase the volume?
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Rodney Mapanga from BEPA, and I have two questions. The first one, I just wanted to understand what is the ANC position on ESCOM unbundling. When will the bill become a law? And then the second one is on localization. As well, I wanted to understand the position, the position of the ANC in terms of localization, because we see that the minimum requirements has been now been eliminated. Is there anything which gonna be done with that, because it worries us as a BEPA? Thank you.
To be clear, when you talk localization, you're talking the procurement bill that was, are you referring to that?
Is
Or
to-
just general localization in terms of procurement?
Yeah, in terms in energy, because for instance, there's a bill which is before Parliament for oil exploitation, but now with that, there's a 5%. There was a 5% localization requirement, but
Okay.
now it's about to be removed. So it's specifically in terms of energy. Thank
Okay,
you.
no thanks. Let's move on.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. My name is Loisa Kyabashe. I just have a few comments, not a question to any of the panelists. My comment is related to the word I had list the most today, which is nuclear. Today, the cheapest and the most reliable plant in the South African grid is Koeberg Power Station. And I think it would be very much uninformed if we're to not amplify the word of nuclear to form central part in the integrated energy plan going forward. I know it does feature, but it does not feature strongly. So I think nuclear as one of the energy sources is an energy source that needs to be embedded fully and drive this economy. Just to give an example, if any one of you can visit the International Atomic Energy Agency website today, the section called Power Reactor Information System, you'll notice that in the world there's about 422 nuclear reactors operating globally. South Africa only has 2. In terms of the nuclear plants being built in the world today, we've got about 57. South Africa is not building any, but Egypt is building 2. Quite a couple of other countries like the United Arab Emirates. So nuclear is a strong technology out there. Countries like America and France, America has got about 92 reactors operating, France more than 50, China is growing, United Arab Emirates is also growing, having started. So I think South Africa is losing an opportunity where we have the skill, the capacity, as well as the approach of managing it and regulating it very well, because we've got a nuclear regulator in this country. So what I'd like to state and vocalize is that I think the people here today, as they inform the policy going forward, they must understand that nuclear has got a very good base from which to operate, because we've operated Koeberg since 1984. In terms of the nuclear technology as its base, we've been operating Nexa in Northwest since 1965, which has got a nuclear reactor, but not for electricity purposes. So we have the capability and what it takes as this country to move nuclear forward. Last point is that we've had an exodus of nuclear skills from this country abroad. Around 2005, we had many of our colleagues leaving South Africa to go to the UK to help the British with their nuclear program. Recently, we had an exodus to the United Arab Emirates where we have got about 200 South Africans having left Quebec to help the Emiratis to build 4 nuclear power plants. And we still complain about not having skills. I think we need to think twice and make sure that we broaden the base and make sure that we develop our capability in developing or in generating cheapest, cleanest base load electricity going forward. Thank you.
Before the next speaker comes, I want to acknowledge, I see she's leaving, the NEC member of the ANC was part with us. She's going to deployments as well, but also the Deputy Minister of COCTA. So as I see them, I'll acknowledge them. It's just that she was facing, her back was facing me, so I didn't see her. I just noticed as she was about to leave. So proceed.
Thank you, Imela Mahol. My name is Washington Bengeni Mufaote. I'm just a concerned resident from the Western in Johannesburg. My question or my statement is based to Prof. Prof, I would like us to be deliberate, and stop probably sugarcoating things and so forth. My question is based on where does the problem of energy comes from? Is ESCOM capacitated enough to handle 60,000 or 60 million? My thinking is that the system for ESCOM was then to probably cater a certain group of individuals, a certain group of people.
Use the mic because
Okay.
we've got people on online platform,
Okay.
they've got to hear you.
My thinking is that ESCOM was built for a certain group during a certain era. It can't be possible that ESCOM recently can cater 60 million households. We need to shy away from that. I'm thinking that we want to conceptualize this ESCOM issue like time and two. There's a necessity of us going back and check where is the problem. What led to ESCOM to be in the state where it is now? It is because during the apartheid era, it was built for a certain tribe of people. It cannot be correct that we think now that ESCOM can be able to cater for extra household. We need to start coming with new solutions to what is happening currently. We need to start thinking outside and say, if we can't use the mixed energy approach, what else can we do? But if we still think that load shedding is going to end, we're still in a dream. It won't happen because of ESCOM was built for a certain individuals at a certain era. So we need to capacitate it. The problem is that we want to shy away from that particular part. And my second comment, Prof, is that can't we go back and check when during 1994, it was led by engineers. So we need to shy away from probably deploying people, probably from private sectors to come and lead ESCOM with private mentalities, but rather invest in engineers which knows the day in and day out of the running of ESCOM. Because if we then employ someone who's not capacitated to run that particular entity, and then it loses its gist. I thank you.
Much, I'm going to take responses first, and then we're going to move into this side and then we go to the back, so that we have a balanced conversation, so that we don't have too many inputs and then we don't get responses. Can we start with Petha? Is there anything you want to respond to, Petha, from the virtual platform on the issues that have been raised?
Thank you, ma'am. I wanted to first answer your question that I couldn't answer because of our technical glitches. Your question was on gender mainstreaming in South Africa's energy and power sector. To preface my answer, number one is it is important to orientate or to create orientation sessions on value chain constructs across the energy and power sector so that women can organize themselves to compete, to participate, and successfully be integrated into those value chains. Existing value chains across generation, transmission, and distribution, and emerging value chains as a result of integration of fourth industrial revolution technologies. Number two is we need an energy sector charter, which is a compact between private sector, public sector, and civil society on mainstreaming women, youth, and persons with disabilities to participate in energy value chains. We need to an appropriately structured and sufficiently financed institution with a relevant constitutional authority for mainstreaming youth, gender, and persons with disability in the energy sector. It is important that we conduct a pervasive finance sector transformation task team to avail liquidity pots for women project developers. And this was touched on by colleagues on the panel when they spoke about creating equity or liquidity pots that enable local people to participate in new projects. Here we're talking about specifically enabling access to finance for women. We need to also consider the REAP bid windows for women, youth, and persons with disabilities to give a chance to participate in providing energy to the country. We need also a multi-stakeholder committee to fast-track access to suitable land for energy projects to be developed for women. We need a South African energy incubator for women-owned businesses without a track record. Otherwise, we'll continue in this trajectory and we'll still see a low representation of women. When the president determined that 40% of public procurement should be designated for women in 2020, it was a move to ensure gender mainstreaming across the economy. We need to review the procurement policies to give effect to this 40% procurement, and this applies to the energy and power sector as well. As DG has stated, a lot of the energy projects already determine the participation of women and communities, but we need to create mandatory audits to see how women, youth, and persons with disabilities have been incorporated in value chains within those projects. And that is my answer to your first question. In terms of the questions that have been asked on the floor, I would like to defer those to my colleagues on the panel to answer, please.
Thank you very much, Bertha. Shall I start with you, DG Mbele?
Thanks, Program Facilitator. The first question that was directed to me was in relation to the fact that there is grid capacity in the Free State, but experience from projects in the Northern Cape indicate that yes, there is participation by designated groups, but the benefits are not trickling through. I think it's a point, it's one of the points that I acknowledged earlier is around the fact that how some of these projects are financed or structured obviously disadvantage some of the players. I think the way to respond to this is that in some of the conversations that we've been having with the likes of the Black Energy Professional Association is that it is such platforms that should actually create space for engagement amongst those that wants to play or play into the space. There are a lot of players who already went through this process. They've learned a lot of lessons from the previous bid windows, and I won't mention them by name, but we can see them now coming through on the other side. And the easiest way for those who are coming in now to have that information is to use those associations that are currently out there. I know, for example, BEPA has been partnering with some of the renewable energy associations to run a number of workshops to specifically share some of this information. But from a department point of view as well, we do have a unit that looks after economic development, women empowerment, youth, and we have strategies that we've developed. And from time to time, we also do organize forums or sessions where we invite various speakers to come and engage with the players or those who want to get into the space. The issue around the challenges with Munichs, I think without really going into the details about the various challenges in the various municipalities, I think those who play into the space will be aware that these are complex projects. And the reality is that in most municipalities, there is no capacity to really process or to even start to engage on these projects. I'm aware that there is work being done by the unit in National Treasury called GTEC in terms of developing frameworks or a framework that can assist municipalities to be able to procure power directly from IPPs. And there is also talk of putting in place a structure that can help to get around the issues of capacity in some of the municipalities. Maybe if I may touch on the question as well around how do we involve youth, women, SMMEs on this just energy transition or projects overall. I think as I had indicated from the department point of view, we do have a unit that's looking at these initiatives. But what we've also done specifically on gender mainstreaming, there is actually an advisory panel to the minister on issues of, I think they meet quarterly, to engage directly on issues of gender mainstreaming to make sure that these issues are being dealt with. Let me not take all the questions and allow other panelists to respond to the rest. Yeah.
Thanks. I think that's important, perhaps, as I give to the two colleagues, just to emphasize, there was something that was talked about, which I think from policy point of view and legislative, the issue around the localization. I think we currently don't have a review of localization. What has happened is that when National Treasury put regulations on procurement, preferential procurement, then they were challenged in court, and that court judgment then therefore meant that National Treasury gave directives to all the departments to mainstream in their own, within their policies, in those departments to have issues of preferential procurement in that clause. For example, in human settlements, we'll have 40% set aside for women, 15% for youth, 10% for people with disability, and 5% for military veterans. So it's all, no, military veteran 10 and people with disability. So it's there already, but what is being required is that it must be within each department. The concern, I know even BBC raised it, was when ESCOM was saying some of these issues are impediment towards making sure that they can achieve an engagement, and we have been very clear from ANC point of view that transformation remains a critical tool for the African National Congress to transform society, but to ensure inclusivity in the economy. Therefore, we do not even have any intention of renegating on transformational targets or even on BEE. As we dealt and concluded conference, major part of the issues around resolution, you'll find transformational issues, you'll find BEE, including those things are there. Including the issue of nuclear, we acknowledge it in the policy documents that we have approved as conference, that nuclear is one of the areas that we need to build. I thought, let me just flag that as I give to others, because those are issues that are asked to ANC for me to be able to respond to. Prof?
Thank you, Chair. There are a few questions. There was a question about the energy efficiency program with the energy performance certificate deadlines that have been extended and all that. One of the things that that we have raised, that forms part of the President's plan, and please go and read this, is energy efficiency and demand side management. Now, in the work stream where I'm playing a partially leadership role, we are looking at, and I hope I'm not going to be in trouble with the President and my DG here. We are looking at...
as a person who invited you, I'll protect you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So we're looking at that to say what will be the impact of demand side management and energy efficiency, and alongside small scale embedded generation. So we're looking at the impact. We're looking at what budget do we need to make available for demand side management and energy efficiency programs going forward. So once that work is done, it's going to open up the space for demand side management, because we believe that under the current situation, we can go a long way if we have savings on the grid. if we save 2,000, 3,000 megawatts, you create a visual power station basically. That then takes the pressure of the grid. So that is coming. I just don't know the form and shape that it will take because we're still running numbers. And I don't know the budget as yet. National Treasury will advise after engaging other departments. In terms of the performance certificates and all those things, I've now moved into Sanedi and they deal with some of these things. I'm gonna go into that. I'll give you my contact and then I'll come back to you on that one. The just energy transition without quality, there was a question around that and the microgrids. Now, ESCOM has got a program, a microgrid program that I have visited. One of the things that they are doing at Komati Power Station that has been closed down is manufacturing of these microgrids. And they want to take them into areas where they don't have immediate plans to electrify the areas for one reason or the other. And the biggest reason is access, mountainous areas and things like that. In terms of quality, it boils down to planning. Renewable energy is about planning. Energy poverty. Yes. That question is quite good, actually. Now, and I've had those conversations with ESCOM at Komati when I visited. And I said to them, these areas where you are going to deploy these microgrids, there's limited economic activities. In some areas, there's none. And then I said to them, one of the things that you should start looking at is stimulating economic activities. Your hydroponics in these areas and things like that, that you can then reserve part of the energy and make sure that it starts to support some of the economic activities in the area. We've had those discussions with them. I don't know what they will do with that going forward. I visited a mini grid in Upper Blink Water in the Eastern Cape. Deep rural area, they didn't have electricity. The people, they appreciated that mini grid. They're actually generating more electricity than what they need, and they don't have load shedding. So they're very happy with that. And again, when I was there with various government departments that are involved, I also asked around economic activities to say, what do we do with additional power that you're generating here? You're curtailing it as opposed to putting it into use and creating some economic activities. So mini grids can be used for that as well. There was a question about just transition framework and closing the gap for unemployment rate. I didn't understand that question properly. Maybe it should be asked again. And then, the extension was that will the sector be able to absorb and maintain all people affected by the transition using the German model and other models that I've spoken about? Now, I gave an example of the German model and the Holland model. One of the things that we know, and it goes back to planning again, is that we know which power station we're going to close when. That we know. We know who is going to be affected when we close down that power station. That information is there at ESCOM. We know, we can identify the value chain associated with that particular power station and it's closing down. It's possible, it's not something, it does not need a professor actually, it needs an intern. So we can do those things and then infuse them into our planning going forward. When I talked about funding that needs to be made available for people who are affected in the energy space, and I gave an example of the hydrogen sector. There are so many sectors. There's the battery manufacturing sector that is coming. When we started with the REAP program, DG, you will remember, part of the main thing that we wanted to do was industrialization of the sector. We started with some of the industries. There's a solar PV plant in East London, IDZ. There's another PV plant somewhere in Durban. When they established the one in East London, one of the things that one of my inputs during the processes was that we must create a shareholder scheme for the workers, so that the workers feel ownership of that industry. And that was done. Now, how that was done, the IDC then bought equity on behalf of those workers. And what happens with equity, for the benefit of those who don't know, after certain years, when the IDC got their money back, then those workers, they start to reap the benefits. So that's my model of the affected ones. So I'm saying, let's extend this model, DG, not only to the people within the 50%, the 50-kilometer radius where a wind farm exists. Let us run models and look at who is affected in the value chain and how can we assist that person. When we do the reskilling and the repurposing, there are jobs that will come from there. Yes, and mainly most of them will be at power station level. Some of the workers won't lose jobs and all that. But what are we doing for the mine worker? What are we doing for the coal transportation person or driver or owner of the fleet? So those are the conversations that I'm saying we should start to have. Then the chair dealt with the localization. The nuclear part, we've been talking about the energy mix. And I'm happy that this question got raised, because my area of specialization is renewable energy. And I'm very proud about that. I was trained by ESCOM in the past, doing my PhD and all that. But I'm a realist. I'll tell you what is real. What is it that we can do and what is it that we cannot do? So the nuclear part, it goes back to planning again. The IRP 2010, if I'm not mistaken, DG will correct me, it had a nuclear share. The IRP 2019 has got, it doesn't have it in the table, it's got a paragraph that says we'll pursue nuclear at a rate and pace that is affordable to the country. The IRP is being revised now, and the reason is not that it's outdated necessarily. The reason is that the technologies, the prices of technologies have been changing. So basically, the least cost model will spit out something different today than what it did in 2019. That's the main reason. Now, when we revise the IRP, we take into consideration all technologies. So what you hear outside, people talking about this is better than that and that is not the conversation that the model has with itself before it spits out the results. The conversation is, what is the least cost technology? What are our decarbonization goals? What are our commitments, in other words, in terms of decarbonization? Then it becomes the plan. And that plan, by the way, there is a consultation process that gets followed, and it ends up with NEDLEC, I think, and then NEDLEC approves it. So nuclear, it's not a matter of whether nuclear is going to be there or not. Nuclear is part of the energy mix. I've looked at the ANC policy documents, like the chair is saying, it has been written there as part of the energy mix. The question becomes, what will be the new IRP say in terms of the technology share? And that is what you should then engage when the IRP, the first draft of the IRP goes out for comments. Then you should then be able to interact with it and say, we disagree with this share because of this and these and these assumptions. The correct assumptions are the following. And then you list that, and then that gets considered. I'm not sure if I've covered everything.
Yeah, I think we've been, so that we can be able to still allow some other hands, that I stopped a bit, so we can pick up some of the issues if we don't.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want something you find for them. Okay. Let's take, I'm going to take 3 hands towards the back because I've covered this portion. 3 hands, if you can take at the back there, and then come this way, just 6. And then we've got 6 hands that we are taking. At least we have a balance of the room in terms of participation. We are not looking at only the people who are in front. Let's proceed.
Good afternoon or good morning, I don't know. I don't have a watch. My name is Akecho Mulelekwa. I just want to ask one question to the Prof. I have many, but I'll just ask the Prof. Prof, 10 years ago, while watching television, I saw one of your colleagues, Professor Takatso Mufokeng, saying that if you are a farmer and you have at least 4 cows, then we have electricity for your whole farm. Was that a myth or is it true? And that, because the reason why I'm asking, I see farmers complaining every day that shortage and outages of electricity are bringing their businesses down. Can't we maybe use that Professor Takatso Mufokeng's model to help farmers that they should generate their own energy and leave the other to other people? I'll stop there. If maybe there are other people, I'll come back again.
Thank you. Number 2.
Revolutionary greetings, everyone, all protocol observed. My name is Tumelo Pizzo. I want to join the queue on the back of discussion between the chairperson of the session and the panelist. Mine is a question that says that what is quite obvious that the coal power generations is going to be with us forever, and there are going to be mechanisms that are going to make sure that we do have clean energy. So my question is that considering the job loss that will happen if coal power generations would be completely cancelled, what is stopping us from reducing the base load of the grid since the new households that are built obviously with coal power generations. So what I'm saying is that what is stopping us from moving forward and as a part of transitioning, those new houses are built with a renewable energy. And my second question is that one of the panelists talked about the carbon emission program that he has embarked on, whereby there is a carbon emission and then reused. The Paris Agreement said that, if my memory is not failing me, that the countries that are having a high pollution, they are going to be fined. What are the measures that are in place for those countries that are having a lot of air pollution? As we know that we must preserve our environment. Thank you very much. That's my 2 questions.
Thank you very much. Number 3, I think, and then there's a lady here in a bit of in front, and then we move this. Yeah, take that one, Noemi. It's fine. And while we go in there, okay, let's proceed.
All right. No, thank you very much. I'm Tato Galeni, student ambassador from Department of International Relations and Cooperation, also serving as the chairman of Student Policing Forum from Velgo, campus CUT. Now, 2 today I just want to be controversial, particularly on certain submissions when approaching issues of nuclear energy, because I feel like everybody within the context of nuclear energy, the thinking is forever, how do we buy the nuclear energy? Instead of thinking, how do we create our own local? Now, part of what I want to indicate is that today, recently, there's a gas plant that is found in Virginia there, which part of, if you check, moving forward, part of it is going to contribute youth employment in a different part of ways of our people in South Africa. But nonetheless, just not to be prolonged and be precise and on point, the reason I'm saying we must at least, Prof, particularly, have a conscious decision and also adopt the issue of the energy charter. I think one of the panelists today has indicated that, to have that energy charter in place, and then locally we produce our own nuclear energy. Because most of South Africans are not aware that even before apartheid, I think it is 1984, nuclear energy was existing in South Africa. 2 nuclear energies which employed 2.7 young people and old. Now, if we have that locally, I think it's going to be less costly than of buying it outside, which is very expensive. So that is what I wanted to submit moving forward. And also, I think Comrade Oliver Tambo has indicated very clearly to say the country belongs to the young people. If the young people are not in full participation on the development of the country, then that country is doomed. As I submit, thank you very much.
Thank you. There's a hand here. Okay, proceed. Number 4, ne?
Is it working? Yeah. No, thank you very much. Greetings to the Honorable Minister, panel members, guests that are here. My name is Councillor Stephanie Naidu. I'm the Speaker of the Mangaung Metropolitan Municipality. I think I have certain submissions to make. I'll stick to our issues at ground level, at local level, because that is where we experience the most difficult task. As councillors, we are labeled as being unresponsive and unable to solve the material conditions of our people on the ground. We go to them. Our reality from an energy perspective is they are vandalizing all substations. These substations are old. It needs money to upgrade them and to get them to workable conditions. But the vandalism doesn't stop. When you don't give them what they want, they vandalize the stuff that they don't need. For example, today they burnt a school because they are telling us we didn't consult them when we brought the school there. So that gives dynamics in terms of when we bring these aspects of renewable energies. Currently, Honorable Minister, we have landfill sites that are becoming chaotic for the city to control. We need about 146 million just to rehabilitate them. However, you can use waste to generate energy. But that now needs discussions of renewable energy mechanisms, and SMMEs who are involved and who want access to our landfill sites. We were there in the week, and the situation is there are about 600 illegal foreigners that are scavenging off the waste there. But it's hand to mouth. It doesn't create an ecosystem that is able to generate money for SMMEs. So my submission was to the city and to the executive mayor that if we give SMMEs access to our landfill sites, can they then use the waste to generate energy? And that is a discussion where you see that waste is actually money that is just laying there. Our landfill sites are full. We don't have money to pay service providers. As a result, if you don't service it for half a day, we are unable to access it as of now. We can't access the Northern Fall landfill site. So that's something that we are not tapping into. And then, Honorable Minister, our young people are saying to us they don't want RDPs anymore because it's taking them away from the economic activity in the cities. They want access to land. There are land pockets that are unused. They want access to land to establish their own businesses. If you're looking at separation of source for renewable energy using waste, you need a place to separate that waste, and you need that land to be there. So from outside, as the governing party, we need to expedite the allocation to land pockets, to young people, to women who have businesses, to households that need things, and not just for residences or for residents or for agriculture, but also just for business, where you have a registered business you're operating from. And then lastly, we have to look at, when we look at the transition to other energy types, currently cities residents owe us 4.8 billion rand in services. When you go to them and present these things, the first thing they ask you is how much will this cost us? We have an 80% poverty base that we have to service out of a 20% tax base that is servicing this 80% of poverty base. So as a city, we are unable to even develop towns as we speak, we're unable to develop webinar, we're unable to develop Van Staren's because there's no money at CAPEX level. So I would want to suggest that when we look at these things, we need to take along our rural community. They call this a metro, but this is not a metro, this is a rural metro because it's at developmental stage. They don't even understand aspects of separation of source at our recyclables. You still have to teach them how to separate paper from plastic. And that's how basic our Mangaung community is. As much as it's called a metro, it's not a metropolis, it is a rural metro. So I would want to appeal to the panel, when we look at these solutions, we have to look at how we take along and create the environment for black SMEs, for women, for youth as well as the unemployed sector, which is the largest sector. And a large majority of that is the young people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Number 5. Let's not deviate. We are not in human settlements issues. We are on energy, please.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. And let me say all protocol observe. Ki dumedisa batho ba Mangaung kaofela. DG, just to check with you on this one, do we perhaps have the system that we have in place that able to detect the illegal connection of power that we are having in our society? Do we have something of that, or are we depending on the tips that we are receiving in the community that there is a illegal connection? Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Thanks. I think that was the last one. I don't know if I've closed out somebody. In that regard, I think we are likely not to take any more. Okay, there's one. We will not be taking any more hands after this. Okay. Oh yeah, I'll come back to you. Proceed.
Good afternoon, Program Director. Thank you very much. My name is Kolile Faku from St. Lake. Beta and Tate Maroja raised 2 issues, Chairperson. The first one is the issue of us making sure that when we go on the jet transition, we make sure that we secure the energy. This is when Tete Maroja came technically to say, you've got that difference of what the power stations which are currently in ESCOM are able to produce. We need to secure and make sure that we close that gap and bringing and investing the money in making sure that those machines are correctly maintained. Where necessary, they need to be refurbished, so that we invest money on those ones and secure that. If we do that, we'll be able to secure your industries to be able to give us more money in terms of tax and returns, which will then indirectly, we take that money and go and use it for economic development. It is very important what Betha raised earlier, Chairperson. South Africa has its own unique approach. As much as the jet issue is being raised international, we need to look how practically it is for us. Because the mistake which we did with the industrialization, when the issue of your basic salary was introduced, we never looked to close the gap of what those previous people that owned the industries closed the gap in order to secure the jobs. We are taking the same approach with the issue of jet. We want to move away totally from coal, which is currently majority of our power generation are dependent on coal. Let's make sure that we keep these plants running and assisting us to get more money in order then to go and invest on the new technologies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Please move the mic to this end. Will be the last person on the floor. Yeah. Please give it to Siriso. I'd ask him to do some tasks, so he must help me as well.
Okay, no, thank you very much, Chair, Honorable Minister. Good afternoon to everyone, all protocol observed. I just want to, the Minister has asked me to talk about fuel and its impact on the economy and what happened during the course of last year. But since I have the mic, I'm going to take this opportunity to just remind all of us about what Mr. Marocha has said. He said we need to solve for X, and that X is baseload. And that, I think, is what the country needs to focus on. All efforts, in my view, a humble view, is that we need to focus on solving for that X on the power side. The other issue on the power side is that we have an obligation as this collective that is in this room, as well as the whole country, to protect the infrastructure that we have for energy. It cannot be left only to the authorities or only left to ESCOM and Transnet to protect energy-related assets. Now, coming back to the shock that we had last year on fuel prices, this, again, is an issue of the narrative. If you were to listen to the narrative last year when the prices went up, it was that the government was inept, was corrupt, was mismanaging the economy. But what they did not tell society was that this was a global phenomenon brought about by two things, and two things only. One was the war in Eastern Europe. The second one was the OPEC countries, oil-producing countries, deciding to support high oil prices. It had nothing to do with government. In fact, the government intervened to save consumers, but to also save this economy by selling strategic stocks, which was also criticized. People were saying, why are you selling strategic reserves? But what they didn't say, again, talks about this narrative, was that Joe Biden in the United States was selling 1 million barrels a day to support the American consumer. The same thing that our government did. But no, it doesn't fit the narrative, because the narrative is that there is an inept and so on and so on. It cannot be. We need to counter these narratives because they are deliberate, they are meant to serve a particular purpose. So the other issue that I want to address is the fear. We've had 3 refineries closing in the country. Now, there was a fear that we're going to run out of fuel. We're going to have shortages and all of that, low fuel shedding. And there is nothing like that, because we planned for a rainy day. We said what would happen if these refineries were to close. Then there was investment, deliberate, on import infrastructure so that we can bring fuel if something happens to the refineries. Now, that on its own is not sustainable. We need to plan for another rainy day. The rainy day that the import infrastructure is not able to sufficiently cater for the economy's needs. So we need to build a refinery. A new refinery needs to be built in this country, and I'm glad that that is getting support from the ruling party. The second issue that we need to do in terms of planning for this rainy day, we need to produce our own oil and gas. We have oil and gas resources that we need to tap on, and I think that we have to be deliberate again. We need to be robust as a country and say to the world, we will use our oil and gas resources to enable our economy to function. So state Intervention is nothing new. In Europe last year, the state has intervened when there was a crisis of energy. They have supported the energy sector by more than $1 trillion. It's money that I can't even think, I can't imagine. But $1 trillion just to support the energy sector within the EU. If that had been done here, then it would be seen as interference. It can't be. So these narratives need to be countered. And we need to be bold as citizens and say, we don't believe this narrative. This is what will work for us, and we're going to make sure it works. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask the panelists, as they respond, they also, I'll give them 5 minutes each. They also do wrapping up for me. I'll start with Prof, come with Ndadi Maroga, and then DG, and then we'll conclude with Betha online. Just as you respond and also wrap up for us this conversation. And maybe in the process, if you could, not more focus on how do we move forward, assist us as ANC. Assist me as I report back to the leadership to say, this is what the conversation has been about. These are the messages that are coming. They've come from the floor, but you are having the concluding remark. If you are to give me 2 things to carry, each of you, to say this is our message to you, as you go back to the leadership, what is it that you want me to take? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Few questions. The issue about farmers having animals and being able to produce their own electricity. So my primary area of specialization is exactly that and more. I'm a specialist in bioenergy, biomass gasification, and biogas digesters. And then I specialize in everything else that I've been talking about. It's possible. You build biodigesters, you feed them with if it's cow dung and water. It ferments. As it ferments, it produces what we call biogas. And that biogas is a mixture of methane and carbon dioxide. And then you can then use, take that gas into a gas engine or a gas turbine, fire it and produce electricity. It's a process that you need to follow. I've installed a number of those kind of systems. In my previous life in the Eastern Cape, we were actually installing them at household level for cooking, where they've got animals. So instead of going to fetch wood, then they would use that. And most of them work. The only challenge is that if you design it in a way that a human being must feed it every day, then it becomes a burden sometimes. Then the issue of illegal connections and detection system, I'll leave that to my other colleagues, but I just want to indicate that that has got a huge impact on the current problem that we have. Way back when I was still with the Investor Forte, we were involved in an ESCOM DSM project where we were changing the less efficient lights to more efficient lights. We recorded savings, and when we went back to do what they call measurement and verification, to check, we found that the savings that we recorded in the past were no longer in existence. And then when we did some further investigations, we then found that there was an informal settlement that's mushroomed closer, and people just connected legally, and then all those savings went into the informal settlement. So that's a big problem, about 400 megawatts that we're talking about. Now, the take home for me is 2 things, Minister. One, on the just energy transition, let us consider the people who are affected. in the sector. We are disrupting a sector. Let's ensure that whatever we do, we benefit the people who are affected. And we should look beyond just the power station levels, and we should look at the energy sector in general, and the various systems that will come into place with industrialization. We must push on industrialization. We must push the issue of locally developed IP. This IP gets developed in South Africa. It goes overseas, and we buy it very expensive. Elon Musk left South Africa. He developed the batteries in the USA. He's about to come back with electric cars, Minister. And we're going to buy them very expensive. This is a person who left with our IP, you know. And it's just one example. There are so many of them. So these MEAs for hydrogen and all that, let us work them into the energy sector going forward and the industrialization. The second issue is planning. Nothing beats planning. The IRP for me, we need to ensure that people participate in the IRP process, DG, so that when it comes out, it is the voice of the people. The people have agreed that this is what we are going to do. Then we don't have a problem of this technology over the other because we've consulted widely. Those are the two things, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Prof, for that. Concluding, I think it's quite takeaways for us. Jacob Maroch.
Chair, what I would advise is, firstly, context is that this energy crisis has created a dent in confidence in South Africa, in the economy, and across the population. I think we need to understand that. So what is required, now I'm advising the leader of society. I will advise, number one, is boldness. The boldness to hold the bull by the horn and say, we are going to solve this thing and solve it once and for all. And it shouldn't be a half-hearted measure, it should be the boldness that shows and takes charge of this problem. A second point on that is coherence. One of the issues that I think emerges in this discussion is you see at the government level lack of coherence, and this lack of coherence becomes the focus as opposed to the execution of a clear plan coming from the leader of society. Now, for instance, as the issue of coherence and boldness, when we say we're going to fix the generation capacity of ESCOM, there mustn't be any doubts within government, within ESCOM, across to say, this is the line of march. We need to fix this. It shouldn't be people choose to say, no, we can't fix it, because it must be clear that the decision has been made. This must be fixed, and all the resources must go around that. So those are the things that I think I will just leave with you, Chair, as the things that I think our leaders should consider. Thank you.
Thank you very much. DG Mbele, how do we help you to get your job done? We sometimes make your job difficult. What is it that you want from us as ANC to make your job easy?
I think maybe before I respond to that, I think there was a direct question which Prof responded to partly around issues of illegal connection. I think the issue of illegal connection is an issue of enforcement by the licensed authority. Where municipality distributes, they obviously have, it's their assets, it's their network, they have the responsibility to make sure that they put in place mechanisms to detect issues of illegal connections. But I think illegal connections are an outcome of a bigger problem, which I think Prof touched on. I think the fact that in general, in our areas, we don't enforce bylaws, you end up with this type of problems, because if obviously we don't make sure that people do not obviously go and develop where they're not supposed to develop. Or if we leave it, we don't start planning around that, eventually we are going to end up with issues of illegal connection. From the department point of view, we do provide, through the fiscus, we do provide funding for electrification or legal connection of proclaimed areas, and we are available to assist in that regard. With regard to the two issues, I think for me the first issue was around what do we need to do in the immediate term. Dr. Maroka has stated that. I cannot say anything more in that regard. I think what for me is important, Chairperson, is the issue of energy security versus climate issues or climate commitments. I think it's important that when it comes to energy security, we identify or we solve the same problem. I think the different angles that, or the different issues that come on the table when it comes to issues of energy is because we look like we're speaking or singing from different hymn books, possibly because we are, in a way, I would argue that we're trying to solve different problems. The other side is trying to ensure that there's energy security. The other side is trying to ensure that we get to a certain point when it comes to our commitments around climate change as soon as possible. What we can say from an energy security point of view is that our energy plan and energy thinking and energy implementation takes into account the commitments insofar as climate change is concerned. So what you see us recommending for as an intervention in the energy space already takes into account the fact that we need to get to a certain point with regard to reduction of emissions and making sure that we achieve our climate goals. And it's important that we balance the two. We don't compromise either one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, DG. Betha, your last words as you wrap up for us, as well, and your message to us as we take away as ANC.
Thank you, ma'am. Two comments as requested. Number one is I am quite happy and encouraged by DG's accession and clarity on the narrative that SA will deploy all forms of clean sources of energy and implement supportive technologies to mitigate impact on the environment. I think that clarity needs to be emphasized and reinforced. Two is the acceleration of the support for women, youth, and persons with disability in their participation in our energy value chains. Prof has given several examples, and I think we need to be quite deliberate in executing those recommendations beyond the structures that have been created. We actually need to see execution of supportive interventions to ensure an inclusive energy ecosystem in our country. Those are the two areas. So clarity around the narrative for clean energy forms so that it's publicly understood that we are not pegging technology against each other, but the government has decided that we will be considering all sources of clean energy in accordance with our abundant domestic resources. And of course, the acceleration of mainstreaming youth, gender, and persons with disability.
Thank you very much for that. Let me take this opportunity to thank the panelists, one for agreeing to be part of this, making time to have this conversation. It's the first time alongside the January 8th that we have such a dialogue, but a dialogue that is necessary and important, that is critical for our work as the ANC, as we remain a leader of society. I must indicate we initially intended only to have a physical activity, But as we were interacting, then there was a request for virtual linking streaming. So we have streamed live basically more than 200 online in terms of streaming on Zoom, also more than almost around 100 and others that we are seeing. So it says that we've got quite a number of people that were part of this but could not participate. As I said at the beginning, we had only opened for the floor for question and comments for those who are physical on the platform, on the venue where we are, not those who are on online platform. And I do note that quite a number of people are a bit unhappy with me because we didn't open for comments and questions online. But what it says to us as the ANC is that there are many people who are willing to be part of this conversation. There are many South Africans who are saying they're willing to be part of finding lasting solutions to the challenges that we are facing. And we will definitely incorporate this as part of our ongoing work. Not only now, we are not starting, we are not ending. That's why I said to the colleagues who are on the panel, give us takeaways. I think what is coming out of this conversation, firstly, is that there is a need for us as the ANC to be clearer on where we stand, communicate better in terms of our policy. And I think we've been able to say our policy remains that of energy mix, but it comes across that we are not very clear, we're not certain, and some of the individuals who were talking here were saying to us, we're given that indication that sometimes we seem to be lingering around and not very clear. So it's quite important for us to be very clear around that. And as we came out of conference yesterday, even delegates were very clear in terms of energy mix as a policy of our movement. But again, the important lesson as well, and perhaps those of us who are practitioners, but also even business people within various sectors, there isn't a need for us to talk down on one technology against the other, because the energy mix means that we are able to accommodate all energy technologies that exist, and also because our IRP, it's one of the documents that acknowledges that. Part of the responsibility and what we said in conference was that the IRP must be revised, the 2019 one, but we said it must be done in a transparent manner so that all of us are able to have confidence in how the modeling has been done and what has been developed out of this. It's part of what we have been given as a mandate, those of us who in government, to go and take and ensure that we implement in that area. Again, what has come across here is that security of energy supply is critical, but also stopping load shedding. Because in this manner, we are protecting not only businesses and the economy, but also household, livelihoods of individuals who are affected, but also to be able to say we can be able to grow our economy beyond where we're sitting. I mean, when we look at Q3 reports, stats, in terms of GDP, despite having such levels of load shedding, we're able to see our GDP growing. So meaning that if we can overcome the issue of load shedding, it means we are positively going to see the growth in terms of GDP, but also not only that, because as well, when we look at labor survey, Q3 also showed positive results in terms of employment, meaning that we could be able to solve majority of the issues that South Africans are complaining, dealing with hunger, dealing with poverty, unemployment, and inequality. Another issue here that has come out strongly is that we have to ensure the participation of previously disadvantaged communities. As we develop new technologies, as we move to new areas that are opportunities, let's ensure that we don't leave our communities, we don't leave those who have not benefited in the economy previously behind, because in that way, we continue and perpetuate the inequality that exists in the economy. So this is one of the messages that is very strong around this. The just energy transition, the message we are taking again is that it should be at the pace and scale that the country can afford. We should not compromise the growth of the economy, but also not compromise communities. But again, not renegade on our commitment of climate change, dealing with climate change in the country. So that's why it's a just, but also in terms of the pace and scale that we can do. But while we're dealing with that, and that's why it's important to always say, the technologies should not clash because you need base load, you need the renewables to come and boost, you need nuclear, you need gas. We didn't even touch gas as we're discussing. We have quite enough gas deposit in the country, opportunities that exist in terms of gas that we should be able to take advantage. Hydro, we need be able to look into. So there are quite a number of areas that we are talking about, protecting such areas so that we are able to see growth of our economy, but also ensuring that as we do all these things that we do not compromise our community. Then another issue that has come strongly, which always come when we deal with government and ANC, is the issue of communication. I think this platform and many others, I know some people say they are talk shops. I don't think they are talk shops. These are platforms that helps to clarify information. These are platforms that helps to ensure that both ourselves in government, in the ANC, and those who are practitioners are on the same page, but we are also singing from the same hymn book. We also can assure South Africans that what we do as interventions have been informed by expertise, but people who are more role players and critical stakeholders in the areas that we do. So this will not be the only sector that we focus on. It will be issues that we focus on many other sectors, as the Secretary General has requested us. And the last message that we take, which was also the message that we got from delegates in conference, was that government has to stop load shedding as in yesterday. It's something that has to be stopped. And the message here is that there are mechanisms that must be put in place in order to stop load shedding, sort out the issue of the power plants to make sure that they can function effectively, take bold steps, take decisions and implement them, and ensure that we can provide energy supply in the country so that everybody can feel comfortable, not only around dealing with issues of economy, but even supporting the safety and security clusters in doing their work, because some of these issues affect them. So those are some of the, just summing up the key issues that we are taking away in terms of the work that is being raised, but also that we are taking from you as participants in terms of what you have been able to guide us. I can assure you quite extensive discussions have been held at the conference. We are cleaning up the documents, we are finalizing to ensure that they are in the manner that will make sense to all of you, but also in the manner that they respond to the challenges and not only become documents that are good, but can be implemented. So with that, from my side, I'd like to request Comrade Bennett to come through and do a vote of thanks on behalf of the ANC as the host province who is hosting the ANC's 111 years celebration. He is the chair of the ETC in the Free State, in the IPC of the ANC. Over to you, Comrade Bennett. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and let me also thank the participation of all the delegates that are here. But maybe, ladies and gentlemen, before I go far also, I need to indicate that now that we have reached the end of our economic dialogue, after stimulating discussions on how economy can be resuscitated, one of the things that we need to take home is that there is no way that we can grow the economy without what we call the enablers. And the enabler in this instance would be energy. And there is no way that the economy can grow substantially and provide jobs unless something happens. So it is our job as the ANC to make sure that we provide a platform where we'd be then able to say that we are able to provide energy consistently so that any person who would want to come and invest knows that there will not be issues of load shedding. Imagine if you are owning a factory and you are busy with production, there's a demand, there are orders. The next thing, you don't have electricity. That's an embarrassment on its own. But also, I need to indicate that I think what Cde Gwede has said, that we need to be bold, is exactly what the ANC needs to do. For instance, if you look at what the Western countries are doing currently, they are promoting what we call the carbon emissions, and they're even providing money to make sure that we are, In fact, we go down in terms of making sure that we clean the environment. But they themselves are now also going the other way. For instance, of the latest, there's a country called England, and there's a place called Cumbria there. They have just opened a mine. After 30 years, opened a mine and have employed over 500 people, a coal mine. On the other side, we have been told that no, stop or reduce using coal. But on the other side, they themselves are using the very same resource that we are being told to stop using. And at the same time, if you look at the trucks that are going to Richards Bay, they are full of coal and quality coal that comes from our country here, because you have got the best quality coal in this country. But these trucks are taking this coal to all these Western countries. But nothing has been said, what is it that we are going to do with that coal, Netemaroha? So clearly there are double standards here. So what we need to make sure that we do as the ANC, we need to provide certainty in such a way that it also benefits us. Because there is no way that we are going to be able to overcome the triple challenges of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. And those are very key in the ANC. And unless we make an impact in those triple challenges, we would never earn the respect of ordinary citizens of this country. So we need to make sure that we move in high speed in the industrialization, which in itself needs a lot of energy. So we obviously still need to have coal to ensure that we are then able to produce a lot of employment. And in so doing, Chair, I would like to thank Professor and the former CEO of ESCOM, Netemaroha, and the DG, Mbele, and you have done a sterling job. And I think it was beautiful that you came and graced the Free State. And I think despite what we have heard about the Free State, we can see how peaceful it is. And of course, also the chair, my minister, I think without you, would not have been able to achieve this. You, including your team, as well as the crew, all of you, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters who are all here. What we are saying as the ANC in the Free State, that you are welcome. You have been a great audience, and we have enjoyed being together and discuss. And I think we did not necessarily get to where we wanted to go, but at least we show that given time and space, and once the minister or the chair of ETC decides to open it more and allow more participation, I'm sure there's going to be great ideas that would come from the floor. And in so doing, I would like to thank everybody and say that we are still busy. Please make sure that you participate in other activities that we are having throughout the province as you are engaging ordinary citizens, and then making sure that some of you, in fact, all of you that I see here, I'm sure I'll see you tomorrow in the gala. The tickets are being sold, the tables for some of you, because I'm sure people that are here are also economists and business people. So there are tables, they range from 10,000 to 1.2 million. So they are available. I think I will provide an address where they can actually be obtained. We'll see you at the gala tomorrow, and then on Sunday, all of us will be at the stadium and celebrate the birthday of the ANC. Amandla! Away, two! Matla! Kia ra leboha.